According to historians, bread pudding, also known as poor man's pudding, can be traced back to the 11th and 12th centuries. The recipes were the result of thrifty people not wanting to waste old or stale bread. This was definitely not a dish for the aristocrat in those days. Surprisingly, in the 18th century, bread pudding was thought to be good for people to eat when they were sick. Imagine that. While the practice still exists to use leftover bread to make this dish, it's not just for the poor man's palate. Today, you can find bread pudding as a delicacy in some of the most influential restaurants on the globe. According to writer Emily Maigret, this dessert is mostly consumed in the United Kingdom, the southern United States, Mexico, Argentina, Puerto Rico, Belgium, and France. While the basic ingredients of bread, eggs, milk, and spices are very similar, what makes the outcome dissimilar is the type of bread. You can use ciabatta, French baguettes, and country loaves if you're looking for a light bread pudding, or if you want something more compact, you can use brioche, challah, sweetbreads, and you can use biscuits. You also have sauces being made from plain sugar bases to liquor bases based on your palate and preference. Okay, first up for all my beginners, we are going to make some bread pudding. First, we're going to take 1 pound of challah bread and we're going to cut it into cubes. You make sure that you maintain the crust. You want to keep everything. Now we're going to take all of our bread and we're going to lay the pieces in the pan. And you want to use all of it. You want to make sure you use about a 9x12 glass pan and put all your challah bread in there and just kind of pack it down firmly like you see right here. Now we're going to break 4 large eggs into a bowl, and we're going to take our whisk and we're going to beat the eggs very well. Then we're going to add 1/2 cup sugar, or you can add a 1/2 cup of Splenda and beat it well. You want to mix these ingredients together and make sure that it's mixed really well before you add your 2 cups of whole milk. And again, you want to take your whisk and mix the ingredients together. Now you're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and you're going to mix that again into your liquid mixture. And then you're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And once again, we're going to take our whisk and mix that together. You're going to take 2 tablespoons of butter at room temperature and add that to your ingredients. Now we're ready to pour our mixture over the bread. And you want to try to pour it evenly so it soaks over all the bread. Trust me, you'll use all of your liquid. Now, this is where you take like a spatula and you gently press all of your bread pieces down into the liquid, because what you want the bread to do is soak up all the liquid that you poured into your pan. And you just want to set that aside for a little bit and let the liquid absorb into the bread. Then you want to make sure that you got a preheated oven. Set it to 350, and voila! It should spring back after it's baked. So about 50 minutes at 350, and you can serve it hot or cold, and you are done. Fabulous bread pudding. Now let's try a recipe for our intermediate bakers.
Thanks to Granny Benefield. She might be gone, but her recipe can be passed on to many. Hey y'all, it's Tammy with Collar Valley Cooks. Today we're making my Granny Benefield's bread pudding. Now my Granny Benefield was raised in the country. She cooked so good. She gardened, she made quilts, she did everything. She was a spitfire, never slowed down kind of granny. And I just loved her. Well, when she made her bread pudding, everybody just loved it. Now when we grew up country, and we didn't eat a lot of spices. She didn't even put cinnamon in her bread pudding. So remember that. If you want to make it just like Granny's, don't put any spices in it. But now me and Chris are spice people. We love the spice, so I'm going to add some spice to it. But y'all remember, if you just want plain old bread pudding like Granny made, don't add the cinnamon and nutmeg, okay? So let's get started, why don't we? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to crumble up these biscuits in our baking dish. We're going to spray this good. Now Granny would have probably used butter and buttered it, okay? But y'all do what y'all want to do. I'm going to crumble up these biscuits. Now I made these biscuits yesterday. Granny would just use the biscuits that she had left over. She made biscuits and cornbread every single day. Every morning she made a pound of cornbread and a tray of biscuits. So when you went to Granny's, you always had something to eat. That's 2 of them. We're going to probably put in about 6 biscuits. Just enough to cover the bottom of this pan. So it's according to how big your biscuits are is how many you're going to need. And I hope that makes some sense to you. I'm going to use all these. So mine, well, I can probably spread this out because you don't want it to have so many in there that it doesn't taste custardy, okay? So just get enough to cover up the bottom. Y'all can see about how deep it is. See? So just spread them out just like that. Now, she said put in a teacup of sugar. Well, a teacup of sugar, Granny would have used a cup. When she measured out, I don't even know if we have a regular little teacup in our pantry, because we got these big old cups. We don't even have a teacup. So I'll just use a measuring cup. How's that? I'm going to use a half a cup of brown sugar and a half a cup of regular sugar. When you make something with brown sugar, you always kind of pack it down in there. So there's your cup, half a cup, half a cup. Okay? There's our sugar. Now, she calls for milk. And if you got sweet milk, which we call regular whole milk, you can use regular whole milk. Me and Chris buy skim milk, so when something's calling for milk, I normally grab my evaporated milk and add some water to it, and it's equivalent to more like a regular whole milk. So I'm going to open this up. I don't have one of those openers here, do I, Chris? I'm sharpening my knife. All y'all country people know that your granny had one of these for sure, because these were knives that were sold to raise money for fundraisers. And so I'm sure your granny had one. This is a paring knife, and I'm actually going to open this milk like I would have back in the old days when I was a young cook, because I didn't have nothing. I would shake it up, and I would take a knife and I would puncture it. Now, I'm not recommending you do it this way. I'm just letting you know this is how we did it back in the day. And then we'd put a little slit on this side just so it would vent and pour, okay? So then we would just turn the knife a little bit, and then you got an opening there and you got a pour spout here, okay? So we're gonna put in a cup of milk. So I'm actually gonna use about a half a cup. See how good that poured? And then about a half a cup of water. And I think that's all she called for. Let me look and make sure. No, she's calling for 2 cups of milk. So we're gonna have to put in this and do it again. We're just gonna use this whole can. That way it'll be good and creamy. How's that? Just a barely little bit more water is all I need to get a cup. So that's 2 cups of milk. Whether you use the evaporated milk or whole milk, it doesn't matter. But I like the taste of evaporated milk. Now we're gonna melt a stick of margarine or butter. Y'all can use butter, but now we grew up eating margarine. And so I'm gonna make it like Granny did and put margarine in it. I'm gonna put this in the microwave and melt it right quick, and then we'll put it in our pot. Okay, what else we got going on? Eggs. 4 eggs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put in that butter. We're gonna mix it up. So that's a half a cup of brown sugar, a half a cup of white granulated sugar, 2 cups of whole milk, or a can of evaporated milk, and whatever you need to finish up the 2 cups equivalent. 4 eggs. Now you're going to want to beat this pretty good because you don't want like a scrambled egg in your, you don't want your egg to look like it's scrambled in your bread pudding. So make sure you beat it good, okay? Now if this was Granny's bread pudding, oh, and a stick of butter, which was margarine in our day. If you want this to be like Granny's, that's all you put in there, period. No more flavorings, okay? Except she did put some vanilla. Let's put in some vanilla. Now my Granny did use vanilla. Teaspoon of vanilla extract. Okay. About forgot it, y'all. That's Granny's bread pudding. She just poured over the top. But now for me and Chris, we're going to add some spices. And I'm going to go ahead and put them in here and mix them up. I'm just going to add let's see, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 little shakes, enough for 6 biscuits. I think that's about how many biscuits I put in there. And then we're going to put in some nutmeg. Now I got this nutmeg from, if y'all want to know where you find it, it's in the section like where the Hispanic spices are. And you have a brand, what did I do with my thing of nutmeg? Oh, there it is over there. Here it is. You have a brand called Badaya, B-A-D-I-A, and I'm sure I'm not saying it right. Badaya is probably how they pronounce it. But anyway, they have nutmeg over there. They got a lot of cool things over there in these little pouches. They got white pepper, and they got a lot of spices that cost a lot for a lot cheaper. So go down that aisle and load up on some good spices. So here's some nutmeg. We're going to, I don't have a microplaner down here. I just got this little, which works. And me and Chris like it, so I'm putting in a good bit. Smells so good. Now I have bought their nutmeg before and it not have a good smell, and I guess it was old, but now this smells pretty good. So all right, let's pour it over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour this over my biscuits. And I'm going to let it sit on the counter for about 20 minutes. Then I'm going to put it in the oven and I'm going to cook it at about 350 degrees, and I will cook it for about, I'd say 45 minutes. Look, when I wrote down Granny's recipe, I wrote it down just like she said, and it says teacup, T-E-A-C-U-P. So cute. I miss my granny so much. I miss her going out in the valley. We all lived out in the country, and you could see Collard Valley on the back of our cookbooks. And it's a big valley, and she lived at the bottom of the valley. We lived at the top, and she would go outside and she'd holler for my granddaddy, and his name was Albert, and she'd holler, and I got her voice. It's real high like Granny, and she'd go, Albert! Just like that. And boy, you could hear her all over the valley. And I just miss her so much. She was such a good woman. Anyway, just make sure you soak this at least 10 to 20 minutes. And let's get this in the oven. Me and Chris are ready to eat it. So we're gonna put this in here. I'm gonna bake it at 350 for about 40-45 minutes. And hopefully it'll be set. Now once it's set, it won't be sloshing and jiggling. So when you check it, just make sure that once it sets up, it should be like kind of like a custard pie, to where when you shake it, it looks solid and not jiggly. So the middle will be the last to get done. Since I'm putting it in a toaster oven, whenever you cook in a toaster oven, it's good to cook it down about 75 degrees from what you would normally cook it in a regular oven. If I put this in a regular oven, I put it at 350, but because this is a toaster oven, I'm gonna put it just before 300. And then I'm gonna put it on 40 minutes, and then we'll come back and take a look at it. All right, let's get this out of here. Dip us out some. I'm ready to eat. That's our bread pudding with biscuits. Get a bowl out. And let's just see how this looks, why don't we? Let's use a, I'm gonna use a fish spatula. See if this is gonna cut good, like I want it to. That's how you want it to do. You want it to be enough moisture that you can cut it, but you still want it to be nice and moist at the same time. So we're going to take a bite and see how it tastes. It's a little bit crunchy on the top, which is good, and it's nice and soft on the inside. Delish. It's so good. Got a nice little crunch on the top, so nice and moist in the middle. Y'all will not be disappointed with this recipe. My granny knew what she was doing, and I love the spices in it. I hope you've enjoyed watching Collard Valley Cooks, where we cook like Granny did. Thanks to Granny Benefield. She might be gone, but her recipe can be passed on to many.
Our final demonstration is for our experienced bakers, so you better bring your A game. And I want to welcome back our fan favorite, Chef Charlie Andrews. Take it away, Charlie.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Charlie. On today's episode, I'm going to be showing y'all how to make my delicious New Orleans bread pudding with a homemade caramel rum sauce. Now, bread pudding is made and known all over the world, but in the United States, it's more popular and prominent in the New Orleans area and the other southern states. Now, the great thing about this recipe is that you have the option to whether if you want to add, omit, change, or even substitute some of the option ingredients like the rum, the raisin, the pineapple, and the pecan. This recipe calls for about 12 individual servings of bread pudding. Not only is it perfect for holidays or just about any occasion, it's absolutely delicious. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, here's all what you'll need to make your New Orleans bread pudding with rum sauce. Let's get started with our ingredients. You'll need 10 ounces of French bread, and as you can see, this is a New Orleans brand French bread here. And along with that, you will need some sugar, brown sugar, salt, large eggs at room temperature, whole milk at room temperature, evaporated milk at room temperature, heavy whipping cream at room temperature, unsalted butter, vanilla extract, butter extract, cinnamon, nutmeg, and allspice. And for our optional ingredients, you will need some rum. I'm using Bacardi white rum, but you could use other rums like bourbon or whatever. And along with that, you're going to need some raisins and some pecans. I'm using shell pecans, but you can also use the pecan halves as well. Remember, these items are optional if you want to use them or not. And to bake your bread pudding, you will need a regular standard 9 by 13 inch glass or metal pan. And there we have it. All right, let's get straight to it. So we're going to get started by cutting the bread. Into medium-sized cubes, as you can see here. Now once done, you're going to take your bread cubes and you're going to add them into this medium-sized bowl here. Alright, so in this small food processor, I'm going to add half a cup of my pecan halves or shell pecans. Now you can also toast your pecans in a preheated 400-degree oven for about 2 to 3 minutes. Don't let them sit in there too long because they'll burn, of course. And I'm going to just pulse this until it's coarse crumbs. Now, if you are not using the pecans, you could just completely omit this step from the recipe. And this took no more than about 10 pulses altogether. Alright, let's get started with our pudding mixture. So in this large bowl, add 2 cups of whole milk at room temperature, 1 1/2 cups of evaporated milk at room temperature, 1 cup of heavy whipping cream at room temperature, 1/3 cup of Bacardi white rum or any rum of your choosing, and make sure that's at room temperature as well. If you're not using rum, you can add an additional 1/3 cup of either the milk, the evaporated milk, or the heavy whipping cream at room temperature. 5 large eggs at room temperature, 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract, and 5 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter. Now I'm going to take my whisk and just stir this until incorporated. Alright, now let's add the rest of our ingredients. Add 1 1/4 cups of sugar, 1 1/4 cups of brown sugar, 1 1/2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/2 teaspoon of allspice, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and for the option ingredients, 1/2 cup of raisins, 1/2 cup of chopped pecans, and if you want to add some crushed pineapple in here, you can add about 1/2 or 2/3 cup of that in here. I'm going to take my whisk and I'm just going to carefully stir these ingredients together until combined. Now I'm going to add the bread cubes right on in there. Now this is 10 ounces by weight of bread that I'm adding in here. 10 ounces of bread is all you need. So now you just take your hands and just press it down. Now if you're nervous, you could just take a little spoon and just press the bread down on in there, and that'll help absorb all the liquid. Alright, that looks good. Alright, now I'm going to cover this. And I'm going to let the bread soak for about 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm going to take some butter and I'm just going to lightly butter the bottom and the sides of my baking pan. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and preheat my oven to 325 degrees. Before you add it in there, just give it a quick stir to ensure that the raisins and everything is not all settled at the bottom. So just give it a quick stir like that. And from there you can just add it into your baking pan. take a spatula and just spread that around. If you want to add any toppings like raisins, pecans, or even sprinkle a little cinnamon on top, you can do so at this time. Now it is ready to be baked. Now I'm going to place this into a preheated 325 degree oven on the bottom rack. Bake this for 45 minutes. Alright, it's been about 45 minutes now for our bread pudding. And as you can see, that's nice and risen. Now let's go ahead and remove this out of the oven. Now if you tap the top of your pudding and it's jiggly, that lets you know that it is done. You can also do the toothpick test as well. Insert it and it should come out clean. Now you're going to let this cool off until it's warm. Just monitor it, okay? Heat your fire to medium heat. Alright, let's get started with our caramel rum sauce. So in a medium-sized pot, we're going to add 1 cup of sugar and a half a cup of water. Now just give this a quick stir. Let this mixture come to a simmer. Now I'm going to give this one last final quick stir. Let this simmer for 10 minutes or until the mixture turns into an amber-like color. Alright, it's been about 10 minutes now, and as you can see, our mixture is an amber-like color. So I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, half a teaspoon of butter extract, 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. Now we'll just give this a quick stir. Now I'm going to add a half a cup of heavy whipping cream and 3 tablespoons of rum. Now you can add as much rum as you like. Now I'm going to give this a quick stir. Turn your fire off. And our caramel rum sauce is now done. Now your mixture will thicken just a little bit more as it cools. If your caramel sauce turns out too thick, you can add more heavy cream or milk as needed and just give it a quick stir. Now I'm going to let this cool off for about 10 minutes. Now to serve your bread pudding, if you want to serve it like this and cut it, you can take the rum caramel sauce and place it into this squeeze bottle and just pour it on top of each individual piece of bread pudding. Or you can pour the caramel rum sauce directly on top of the bread pudding. Just take a spatula and just spread that around. And from there, your bread pudding is ready to be served. Now it's time to go ahead and take a bite. But this looks so good, I don't even want it. Woo! Y'all, this is absolutely delicious. The bread pudding is soft, it's moist. You can taste the flavor of the rum, the caramel sauce. It has just the right amount of sweetness. It's not overly sweet at all. And since I added those raisins and pecans, you can taste the flavors of those as well. It's absolutely delicious. So give the recipe a try. Hey y'all, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like my channel, hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell button if you want to be notified of my videos. Now I have an official website for all of my recipes, including this fabulous homemade New Orleans bread pudding with rum sauce. You can go to www.charliecookandrews.com. I'm also on Facebook and on Instagram under the name Charlie Cook Andrews. So until next time, take care, and I hope you all have a great day.